Hello and welcome back. We're here at the European edition of the 200th YCS. I wonder how many different ways I've been able to say that over the event. I'm still here with Matt Bell.
Hey, Luke Withington, how are you doing?
I'm good. I don't know why I said your full name.
Oh, I've said it back.
I've come along with a special new addition to our analysis desk.
Yes, this will be the trophy that the lucky winner of Utrecht is going to walk away with. The first of the free 200 champions we're going to have this weekend.
Yeah.
Beautiful trophy, actually.
It really is.
And they'll also get a playable version of the card as well, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah, it is an amazing trophy.
I am terrified having it on here because if we break it, it is literally my problem.
Yeah.
So let's just be extra careful with this one.
I like the part where if we break it, it's your problem. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, because you're just going to be like, oh, I'm on break.
Oh dear, it's broken now. Anyway, so on to the Yu-Gi-Oh! We have two players here, and not many kind of outsider decks are still remaining here in the tournament now, but one of the decks which I didn't think I would be saying this is an outsider deck.
We had a nice little rainbow of a field when we saw the breakdown a minute ago. I don't know how many of them made it through the top 32.
That's the thing. I
the
think
Cyber Dragons
a lot of them went out. Yeah, I think a lot of them went out. So I didn't think I would say this, but Goki is now considered an outsider deck, apparently, as far as our deck breakdown is concerned. And we have one of those players in our feature match, and he's playing against Sky Strikers.
Yes, Goki versus Sky Strikers. So we can look back at the WCQ format, take away a few cards, and see if anything changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the results of the Goki versus Sky Striker matchup at the moment? Who's technically favoured in this match?
Goki is favoured against Sky Striker Pure and the Trickstar variant as well.
Not
by
much.
1%. So
Only 1%?
Not a lot, but it's a lot of games. 160 games, it's quite a lot.
So that's, yeah, so it should be probably, okay, it should be around probably 50-50, unless it's something like horribly going wrong for the one of the two decks.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if the Goki Extra Link is still putting in as much work against the Sky Striker deck as it was before.
We've had it pointed out by a few of our players now, and we've said it as well, that the kind of outsider decks that are making it to this point, there's a reason for that. They're either using some good tech cards, or they're able to play the deck very well. So it wouldn't surprise me if even just this small advantage in the statistics is going to be quite a big advantage for our Goki player here, who has managed to make it this far.
Yes, let's see what happens, and then we get to see if how that affects our stats and your perceptions at home. Should you be on Goki or Sky Striker or something else? We'll find out as the tournament progresses.
So, with that in mind, let's head on over to Oliver Gurman and Tom Payne to give us the play-by-play. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Luke and Matt. We're super excited about the top 32 matchup. In fact, Kevin Cutter, the German player with Goki, came up to me earlier when I was about to do a Facebook Live, just when we were about to start the top 64, and he was really happy. He was like, I came so close so many times, was on the bubble all the time. Today I did it, I'm now in the top 64, and look at him go. He's now in the top 32 against Christos Mourikis from Greece. But we mentioned this a couple of times, Greek players, they always come prepared. They know exactly what to make of their deck. In this case, Christos is playing the Sky Striker deck, which is supposed to be the best deck in the field.
Well, it's definitely the most represented. So
yes.
if you went around and asked everyone what the best deck was, most answers would have been Sky Striker.
My question to you would be, because these guys just talked about win percentages, considering that Goki went up in relative numbers and is now the second most represented deck, when it was at the start of the day, yesterday, the seventh most represented deck, like just barely sneaking up on top of the other category, basically. Are you surprised that it's almost a 50-50?
I mean, it might just be that Goki had higher win percentages against decks which were the Sky Striker, because Sky Striker was kind of, I think people would struggle to argue that it wasn't the best deck or close to the best deck. So even if your win percentage is 50% against what is considered to be the best deck, that's pretty good, right? Yeah, but just in terms of relative numbers and how they are working, because Goki was moving up the ranks the whole time, they should have a higher than 50%. Well, Sky Striker overall had something like 65 yesterday, didn't it? So if it's having 65 against other decks, then the other decks are going down and Goki's going up.
So this might be the worst matchup for Goki. I'm not sure about that.
If your worst matchup is 50%, then that's still pretty good.
That's a good way to put it, yes. So these two guys. We talked a little bit about these. Kevin Cutter did have some success before. I cannot tell you 100% where. Christos Mourikis, this is fine.
Seems to be a well-known name.
Yeah, there's a difference between somebody who's made it to the top 8 or top 32 before and somebody who, honestly, I have never heard this name before. Both of these guys have had success before, so it's not a first for them. It's very likely not the first feature match for them, which also helps because with the big lights and everything, that's a very different feeling compared to
very bright lights over there.
Yeah, and especially for some people that like to play in a cave, that's very different feeling. All right. Anything else we need to tell these guys before we start the match?
I mean, I don't think so. We've got the nice malicious package, which I am a fan of, going on in the Goki deck, which is quite cool. And compared to last format, a fairly slim number of hand traps, so only 5 hand traps.
All right.
In Christos' deck. So we could see the likelihood that we will see an explosive Goki opening in the event that the Goki player gets to go first.
All right, guys. With that, let's take you to the feature match table and get our game on for the top 32. So you initially said you're a bit surprised about the so few players representing Goki at this tournament because you thought it still was a little bit better.
Yep.
I did mention in the last feature match with Goki, which has been a while ago, I think something like round 4, something like that.
Yeah, it was really early on. Maybe round 2.
It's definitely been a while. Yeah, it was round 2, you're right. World Challenge versus Goki. Back then, I mentioned that I talked to Christos Nielsen from Denmark. No, actually, that was yesterday evening. Sorry. I talked to him and he said they really tried to make Goki work and they couldn't. They tried to find a version which goes for really, really strong combos, very hard to stop. And they said in the case that your opponent drops a hand card, you can sometimes just immediately lose the game. And that is the reason.
Very possibly. I mean, I think Goblin was a card that allowed you to... Well, it allows you to summon extra monsters, right? So it allows you to extend combos in situations where you might not have been able to before. So without the Goblin, as well as that, it made your extra link much harder to deal with. So combining those two facts, it's harder to get through hand traps, and even if you do, then your field is not as imposing as it used to be. You can see why a lot of players thought that Goki was not as strong. And I mean, no question, it definitely isn't as strong. But it depends whether you think Goki is still strong enough.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a... tiny bit of confusion because the cards that we see
We're only seeing some of the cards, yeah.
No, it's more that they are reversed.
Aha.
So what do you see below?
Oh, yeah, we've got Christos' picture.
Yeah. I'm going to just try and restart this and sort it out for you guys. There's going to be one round today where I don't have to do this. Maybe in the finals. I'm okay with that. It can be the finals.
All right, so the cards are the wrong way around. Christos' picture is above Christos' hands and his play. So it looks like he's got the 1 Widow Anchor and 2 Eagle Booster, but that may not have updated.
Yeah, we're getting the hang of this. It's okay.
And Kevin's also only got 4 cards in his hand at the moment. I'm sure he does actually have one more.
Yeah, this is the correct order. Actually, I think everything is correct. Even the facial cameras are also wrong. On the left-hand side, we see Christos.
Yeah, so Christos' face is above Christos' cards. So Christos is playing Sky Striker. I think I got a good flash of Kevin's hand there as he's shuffling it. It looks like the kind of hand that you want. So it might be that he has enough extenders in his hand to push through the defense of Christos.
Yeah, I broke the system.
You broke it.
I think it's still reloading, so we might have the correct stuff in just a second.
But for the time being?
For the time being, we don't.
We're just going to have to watch the cards on the field.
Yeah, it's old school coverage.
Oh, this is very strange. How do we know what's going on?
This is almost like we have to do something. We have to look and everything.
We have to figure it out? Madness.
So now we got the names on the correct side.
Yes, I agree.
And the cards.
And the cards. That's excellent.
Did I do it?
I think the cards in hand are right.
Okay. Tech team is just
Tech team tells us that it was not.
They're taking credit for this, but since they cannot be heard by anybody but us, I'm just going to keep claiming that I fixed it.
Could we bring up what Christos' face downs are? I don't think his hand is going to come into play that much this turn because there aren't any hand traps.
That's a good point.
So he's got the 1 Twin Twisters, which I don't think is very useful in this situation.
The Widow Anchor is the important card.
The Widow Anchor, and a lot of Sky Striker players have been a big fan of the Eagle Booster, to the extent that Christos has included how many copies? I can't see. 3 Eagle Boosters. So he obviously likes the card if he's willing to play 3 copies of Eagle Booster.
Yeah.
So I think the plan with Eagle Booster is just to activate it and say to your opponent, you can't kill my monster, you can't extra link me, and hopefully you can't win the game this turn.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a guy called Boral Sword that might argue as to whether you can deal 8,000 damage to your opponent on the turn that they activate Eagle Booster on their one extra deck monster, because it's pretty good at doing a lot of damage. It's got 2 attacks. It gets a lot of attack points. But
we've seen
there is no Boral Sword
Oh.
in Kevin's extra deck.
Interestingly enough, because we have seen Boral Sword this weekend doing just exactly what you explained. Though I can't tell you guys which round that happened, even though I have a couple of notes. It's just too many.
So, interestingly enough, I think the Eagle Booster, my prediction for what's going to happen is that the Eagle Booster will protect the Shizuku, but that will be it. And Christos will be left with no cards left at all. I think we will see Gumblar, we will see Trigate, we'll see a variety of Link monsters come down, which Christos really has no defense against anymore. And he may be able to survive this turn, but I don't think he will survive this turn with any decent presence. I don't think he will have many cards in his hand, and I don't think he'll have any cards in his hand. I don't think he'll have any cards other than the Shizuku on the field. That's my fortune telling.
Which is interesting, because Christos' start wasn't like a complete train wreck or anything like that. He had some action going. He could do a little bit of searching and stuff.
A little bit of searching.
Still,
I mean, this is the thing in pace. So Goki definitely has the pace on almost every deck this format. So Sky Striker does more over a couple of turns than any other deck, but Goki does so much more on its first turn.
Well, if you might be the best marathon runner in the
Indeed.
world, but if you're going up for a sprint competition,
it's almost incomparable how much Goki achieves on one turn.
Yeah.
To other decks this format.
Yeah,
other than other very crazy combo
honestly,
decks
not just
like Spiral.
this format. I just thought back.
Well,
and yes,
so long as it's been around, yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Ruler has been doing a lot in one turn back in the days. But I think Goki is the one that is like really able to assemble a gigantic field that nobody can break.
I think if you pick Goki against Dragon Ruler, I'm going with one winner. Well, to be fair, Dragon Ruler
depends on the limited and
did
forbidden.
get 3 copies of Max C, and that was pretty nasty. Although I don't think if Goki set up an extra link with Goblin that Dragon Ruler could do anything about that. I might be wrong. I do remember people playing some old games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they would pit Dragon Ruler against other decks and see what happens, and it turns out that Dragon Ruler did really badly against a Beatrice. They had Big Eye, but that was about it to actually get rid of a Beatrice. I think for a lot of people, Dragon Ruler kind of marked a change. It was significantly more powerful than all the decks at the time, but then even the decks afterwards are actually better.
It's also one of those memorable formats. Like everybody knows.
Everyone knows. I think it really marked a big change.
Yeah. It's like not every format goes down in history books as something to be remembered. This is one of them where everybody's like, I have an opinion about this. You might not like it, but I do have one.
I think if you want to see the Dragon Rulers unbanned, then you should send a message to Matt Bell.
That is a very good point, yeah. In fact, if you have any good suggestions for the Forbidden Unlimited list, Matt Bell's inbox is always open for you guys.
He's the guy.
He is.
So as we see, well, I suppose as I predicted, the Eagle Booster has been activated. But now all of the other cards have mysteriously vanished from Christos' field by a variety of nightmare effects. So, yeah, at this point, I can't see a universe where Kevin does not end up with a Gumblar discarding the 2 remaining cards in Christos' hand and a Trigate Wizard on the field, which is probably going to be a strong enough position to stop Christos from coming back with what he will end with, which is the Shizuku and 1 other card in his hand.
I mean, quite honestly, it doesn't get much better than that. Especially if you're going second, your opponent. He didn't have the best start ever, but it wasn't.
It was fine. It was definitely an adequate start for a Sky Striker deck. It's not much more than you would expect.
And you gotta feel good about yourself. Like in that feature match, you're just like, yeah, I just did exactly what my deck was supposed to do. I showcased that I know my ways around it. And in just 10 minutes, coming from behind with my opponent going first, I just turned this game around and was in a very favorable position.
I think a lot. So what we've seen a few times this weekend, like watching Sky Striker against Pendulum, like watching Sky Striker against Crusadia, they do their turn 1, and I think if you come at them very hard and very fast, then you can outpace them and you can take the game on this. So this turn is really the swing turn. You have one turn before the Sky Striker deck really starts to steamroll and it starts to gain all this advantage. So he does have an engage in his hand, which would be drawing multiple cards on his next turn and gaining a lot of advantage. But that engage is never going to see the light of day in this game.
And the big question is, when is Christos going to shuffle up here?
To be honest, if I was Christos, I would have shuffled up already, because I know, I mean, maybe there is the line of thought that
you get to see another card.
You might see more cards. Your opponent might make my main thing is my opponent might make a mistake.
Yeah.
However, I would not want to give my opponent the sort of satisfaction and the confidence that's going to come with being able to combo off for 10 minutes, get rid of all of my cards.
Yeah.
I would rather just say, you know what, you win this game, and then not. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of it's a psychological thing, right? He's going to get to play his whole deck on the stream.
He's like,
he's going to get to show off. He's going to get to show off his combos. He's going to get to end with, he's going to get to go, look at what I can do to you. You're going to have no cards.
Look at me solitaring. I'm doing fine here.
So
yeah, you want to take that away.
That's the reason that I would not be carrying on this game, as well as the fact that.
But isn't that just the excuse for saying I'm a very mean person? I don't want my opponent to have any fun.
I mean, maybe, but.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's never having fun, but
no worries, that was a yes.
It's a game and you're trying to win it, right?
Okay. Would you say it's a sport?
No.
Okay.
No one is sweating yet.
Well, some people are.
Maybe.
Speed play, yes, indeed.
I mean, I don't know whether you're Christos, whether you decide that you prefer. So the other decision is how much time you want left in the game.
Yeah.
So if you.
But Sky Striker takes a little bit longer to put those gigantic beasts on the field.
It does, but what it does do is poke for 1500 with Hayate. So you might decide that.
Yeah.
In a game where both decks haven't had the full chance to express themselves, the Sky Striker will do a little bit of damage and the Goki deck won't do any damage.
We really need a soundboard. I just want to play the Express Yourself song right now. That would be so great.
So now we see the cards in Christos' hand, leaving him. So yeah, we can really see that, yeah, Christos is really being left with absolutely nothing, and this is what the Goki deck is still very capable of doing. Sword
gets hit. Phoenix Blade gets hit, which is a good thing. Because
that's perfect, yeah, because the Phoenix Blade is the free one that can come back to your hand.
Make it come back over and over again. This card might get limited, sorry, not limited.
And you can limit it all you like.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't think I've seen more than one copy in a deck list.
It's okay, But, of course, restricted completely, like forbidden is the word.
Forbidden, yeah. Honestly, I would say Isolde is more the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think that it's less good because you've got that one less discard than you used to with. So you used to have the one extra discard with Goblin, but now most of the time you do the first turn combos with Goki. You use it once for Mermaid and maybe another time for what's his face, Gumblar, if you're lucky enough to discard it. So he's chosen not to make the Trigate and instead just leave the Firewall with a triple bounce.
I mean, against one card.
Against one card, yeah. This is still pretty threatening, I would say.
What can is it? 5 big monsters against one card in hand. I would also agree that it's pretty threatening.
I am surprised that he didn't want to end his turn with a Trigate. But I mean, I suppose Firewall with a bounce is perfectly good as well. Or the chance to have a Link Karibo in his graveyard, so then he could, in this situation, discard 2 further cards from Christos.
Yeah, so no responses here from Cevin. He's also not quite out of cards, but Chunk Forward and the Phoenix Blade are not going to be like any sort of interaction on his opponent's turn. Those
That's
2 cards in his hand.
He has got Firewall on the field,
Firewall, yeah,
which can add multiple cards from his graveyard to his hand.
Don't have the artwork of Firewall.
We don't have the artwork of Firewall. Well, everyone can see the picture of Firewall.
Yeah.
I think by now most people know what it does.
I would agree.
I think if you don't know what Firewall does, then you've probably not been playing Yu-Gi-Oh!
You're probably
the last
not,
couple of months.
Yeah, or you're not like anymore in this tournament. Maybe you just came to play some public events, which is fine because you could have won a giant card just by playing in a couple of public events this weekend.
Is this the first time we've seen Firewall since round 2?
Very likely. I definitely do not remember having seen it.
I don't think it's featured since.
I didn't even write it down that it was...
Ooh, Christos has done what is, well, Sky Striker's best combo where you activate engage and then you draw another engage off the engage. So then you get to activate engage again and draw another card and search another card. Honestly, I don't think Cevin ended on an optimal board here. I think if he'd ended with a Link Karibo in his graveyard and a Octastretch face up on the field, then he could have, in his after Christos had used the effect of Kagari, he could have then discarded one of the engages. Well, discarded both the cards in his hand and stopped this from happening.
It's kind of crazy how he suddenly has 4 cards in hand.
That is what engage does.
Yeah, but still, like coming back from nothing.
I'm also intrigued as to why Cevin didn't attack and do some damage on his last turn. I don't think Christoph had enough cards that the Shizuku had more attack than the Firewall and the Gunblar. So I don't know why he didn't attack.
So here's the bounce.
Here's the bounce. So the multi-roll kind of forces you to use the bounce now, because otherwise what's going to happen is well, you can no longer chain to any of his spell card effects. So he could just activate Widow Anchor and you wouldn't be able to chain Firewall, and that would be a bit rubbish, because then you would lose the opportunity to use Firewall.
So we were wondering why Christos is not shuffling up, but now suddenly it looks like there's a very good reason for that, yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, I don't think Cevin... I mean, I'm not going to go through and analyse what he could have done differently, because there's so many different options. But having practiced the deck myself, I feel like his hand was strong enough that he could have ended on a more... He could have left Christoph with less resources. In particular, he should have hopefully left Christoph without the ability to resolve engage on his turn. I don't think the Firewall bounce is a very threatening option against the Sky Striker deck, because if he bounces the Kagari back to the extra deck to try and get rid of one of Christoph's cards, then the Sky Striker Ray just comes back from the graveyard. So Sky Striker Ray triggers if your Sky Striker Link monster leaves the field, basically through any means, as long as you're not getting rid of it, as long as it's your opponent. So if it's battle or card effect, it doesn't matter where it's sent.
Yeah.
Unless it's banished face down, because then nobody knows that it was a Sky Striker monster.
All right.
I'm not sure that's the sort of technical ruling, but in fact nobody knows, and that's why it doesn't come back, because it couldn't tell.
But I just double checked, and the life points actually are 8,000 each. So
okay, yeah, I'm not sure why Cevin wouldn't have attacked, to be honest, because it does damage, and that's the aim of the game. I mean, maybe he thought you weren't allowed to attack?
It can be the end of the game.
Well, I said it was the aim of the game.
The aim of the game. Ah, okay.
The name of the game.
That makes sense now.
So Christos has, it looks like, used up all of the cards in his hand, but don't let that fool you, because he does have a multi-roll face down, which will be able to set 2 cards. So here we're seeing Topologic Bomber Dragon, which is a surprisingly irritating card to play around or play through, because its effect triggers whenever a monster is summoned to a zone that a Link monster points to, and then it will destroy all the face-up monsters in the main monster zones. So if Cevin were to just normal summon something in either of the zones to the left or the right of the Gunblar Dragon, then that would destroy his entire field. So you do have to be careful. It somewhat shuts off the different zones that you can use. And it also has an effect to do some burn damage to your opponent.
Right.
And in fact, Christos doesn't have to wait for Cevin to trigger the Gunblar Dragon. He can do it himself with the Shark Cannon.
So what does Cevin need here to come back from this? From this comeback? To come back from the comeback?
From the comeback? The card you always want to draw is Soul Charge. But that might be a Hail Mary.
Did he just draw into Soul Charge?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so much for that. This is how you do it.
Well, you asked me what he needed.
Yeah, and he delivered. His
then
thing was
he did
really
it.
like... So, is he... yeah, he wants to trigger the effect of the Topologic Bomber Dragon here?
He's not triggering the effect of Bomber Dragon. He's just... I don't know why he's doing that, to be honest.
Because, like, Christos was immediately pointing at his
I assume,
Bomber Dragon.
it will trigger the Bomber Dragon, but I assume the main aim is to clear some of his removal. And if I'm totally honest, I don't know why it's not being used to clear the Shark Cannon, because the Shark Cannon is the most threatening.
But Cevin looks like he knows what he's doing here. He just checks the graveyard again of his opponent.
I'll trust him. So he gets to draw a card because the Phoenix is co-linked.
Then it gets destroyed.
Then it gets destroyed by the Bomber Dragon.
All right.
So now I guess...
He's basically setting up the Soul Charge here.
Yeah, so he wants to prompt as much back row from Christos as he can before activating the Soul Charge. Because Bomber Dragon does destroy all the monsters on the field when its effect activates. So even if Christos brings back 5 monsters, Bomber Dragon doesn't mind. It just destroys all of them. So long as he's still got the Shark Cannon face down, then Bomber Dragon can destroy his whole board. So it will trade 1 for, well, even better than 1 for 1 with the Soul Charge.
Yeah, X for 1. Not quite. And with 6,000 life, Cevin also has ways to bring back a couple of monsters.
Indeed, a lot of monsters. What's quite nice is Christos can actually bring back the Firewall Dragon underneath the Bomber Dragon, and then it'll be co-linked for a second before it gets destroyed, so he can use the effect of Firewall Dragon to add back something from his graveyard to his hand if he wants to. Or he could add back one of the Soul Charge targets. So I think a priority for Christos will be getting around the Shark Cannon before activating Soul Charge.
Sounds good. Here is the Soul Charge, guys. This is the card that he just drew. And
this is the big bad.
2 seconds after I asked what card does he need, and you said, yes, Soul Charge would be that one card.
And when someone says what card do they need to draw and you say Soul Charge, that normally means they're in a tight spot.
That is true, yeah. But
I mean, it's not...
Nobody's going to ask once he's out of that tight spot. It's just a big topic before they found a way out of it. Nobody's going to remember, oh, that was such a close game. All they remember is he advanced to the top 16.
So he has prompted Christos to use the... what's his face? I should know.
Shark Cannon.
Shark Cannon. I was talking about it before. Now, I assume the best target for the Shark Cannon is the Firewall Dragon, so he'll get the 1 bounce just for free, because the main point of the Shark Cannon is just to bring back the... Okay, he's not done that. But yeah, if he'd brought back the Firewall there, then he could have got a free Ray added to his hand.
Yeah,
would have been
just triggered his own topologic Bomber Dragon.
It would have done exactly the same thing as bring back the Phoenix, but for the fact he would have got a free Ray.
But now Christos is out of options in terms of destroying monsters.
He still has a Widow Anchor.
Yeah,
now one thing
monsters.
I'm not sure about here is Soul Charge is going to bring back a lot of monsters simultaneously. And Topologic Bomber Dragon says whenever a monster is summoned to a zone that a link monster points to. So I don't know if the link monster had to be on the field before the monster was summoned.
If there's anything that points to the side.
Certainly going to summon some co-linked monsters here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether these monsters are just going to die to the effect of Bomber Dragon.
I see. That would be really awkward.
I don't know if either of the players are going to mention this.
Cevin doesn't look like he's...
he doesn't seem to think that that is the case, and I don't actually know whether that's the case either. So I assume Firewall... I assume Firewall will be summoned to the zone under the other extra monster zone, so it can be co-linked once again to maybe something like a Link Karibo. But he's probably not going to want to do that. He's probably going to want to bounce the Bomber Dragon first. I don't know what people in the Twitch chat have to say, but I don't think it's our place to interrupt the game with a ruling that I'm not entirely sure about.
Attention duelists. Can Eugen Knight and Joshua Smith come to the main event stage? Eugen Knight and Joshua Smith to the main event stage, please.
But that is an interesting one, and it's interesting to see rulings like this come up in quite niche situations.
Yeah, I mean, Christos didn't immediately say, hey, by the way...
he's pointing to the Bomber Dragon now, actually.
I think he's now asking the judge.
Or maybe the judge
prompted
it after you did. It's definitely an interesting question.
Yeah, but
it's not one I know the answer to.
The monster first needs to point to the zone before something gets special summoned into the zone.
I don't know.
But we're going to see the resolution of this. This is going to be the answer. Do the monsters stay on the field, yes or no? And if they do, then that means this was a good play.
I mean, yeah, even if it's no, then Firewall can still be activated in the chain to Bomber Dragon and still bounce multiple cards. So I wouldn't say it's completely dire for Cevin, but it's not as good as if he didn't lose all of his monsters.
Yeah, but what a game! We thought very early on that Kevin Carter had this. Christos Mourikis turns the tables. Now suddenly Kevin Carter comes back with the Soul Charge, he's putting himself in a position where he can maybe win this game, or at least see another turn. And we're now like looking at 24 minutes of action between these two guys, and nobody here has been playing slowly in any way.
No, not at all. I'm assuming that the second rematch has not... I don't think the second rematch has been used by Cevin, which is quite an important resource in his deck. Can you remember whether the Goki, what's-his-face, Bear Hug, permanently halves the attack of the monster, or just until the end phase?
If it's special summoned by the effect of a Goki card, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes half its original attack until the end of this turn.
Okay, I mean, I don't think it matters because I think Christos now has game on the table because Kevin's only on 1,000 and Bomber Dragon burns when it attacks a monster. So it will just be able to swing into the firewall and burn for 2,500. And that should end the game, assuming I know Bomber Dragon correctly. I'm not sure if it has to live, but I don't think it does have to live. So it will just do 2,500 and end the game.
Yeah, and Christos is pointing at the topologic Bomber Dragon. Cevin, now we see a bit of confusion on his face for the first time in this entire game.
I think most people know the effect of Bomber Dragon for the second effect, which kind of bombs the field.
Yeah,
as opposed to the first
we're
effect,
seeing it there. His face was very clear, indicating that I forgot about this particular effect.
I forgot about that one.
I knew about the other effect. So what a roller coaster ride off a duel.
A roller coaster.
26 minutes of action back and forth between Christos Mourikis and Kevin Cutter. And it seemed like almost every time that one of these guys had the win, but then the other guy came back. In the end, however, Christos Mourikis, who we had discarded very early on, gets away with the win.
I'd thought to myself that this game was wrapped up in Kevin's favour. I think he had basically everything he could ask for. He had a very good hand.
Yeah.
Christos had barely any interruptions, but for the Eagle Booster, and I think the plan of the Eagle Booster did come through. If I'm going to be totally honest, I think the game was in Kevin's hands on his second turn, and if he'd been able to set up a Trigate Wizard to negate the engage that Christos added back to his hand, or he'd been able to set up a second trigger of the Gunblar for next turn, then Christos would not have had any resources to come back into the second game.
But Christos with the Widow Anchor, with yet another spell.
And also the decision from Cevin to target the multi-roll on the second turn for destruction with the Phoenix, because if he did... Both the Widow Anchor and the Shark Cannon were used in quite useful situations for Christos. So if he just targeted either of the other cards, then Christos would have been out of interruptions for his next round of plays as well.
It was basically the last card that Christos still had face down.
Was the Widow Anchor. So if he just targeted that in the first place...
Yeah, but he didn't know where it was, of course. Or did he?
Well, he didn't know which one was Widow Anchor and which one was Shark Cannon, but both of them were used and both of them were extremely... If he just targeted either of those cards...
Yeah, or if Christos didn't have both of them.
But he knew Christos had both of them.
Yeah, but just generally speaking, if Christos wouldn't have had that much searching and everything with the double engage... that would have been a very different game, of course, but that's easy to say. I mean, also with that Soul Charge, ripping it from the top, that would have been a very different game if that card hadn't seen the light of play.
Yes, certainly. But yeah, honestly, I think setting aside the fourth turn, I think Cevin may have been able to set up a slightly more imposing board than... I mean, it was a fairly imposing board. It basically ran Christos out of cards, but there we see the power of the Sky Striker engage, being able to use 2 engages in a turn and then even draw another engage off the first engage to just end up with so many more cards than it looks like you should have. So in the side deck for Cevin, we see quite a nice tech in the side deck of Attack Gainer, which is a level 1 Earth Tuner monster, so it can be summoned off as Zold, and then the plan is to upgrade that and presumably Goki Super X into a Naturia Beast. And as everyone knows, the Sky Striker deck is fond of playing a lot of spell cards, and Naturia Beast negates spell cards. So I think that's the plan.
It most certainly is. So how much of an advantage is it here going first for Cevin?
I think it's what he wants to do, but Christos has got some very, very nasty hand traps in his hand. And the nastiest one I can see there is the Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, which can banish Isolde or Firewall from the extra deck of Cevin, depending on what Christos has in his extra deck. And I think he has the Isolde, which can really put a bit of a damper on the day of a Goki player. Because he can no longer use.
He's got three hand traps, by the way.
Many interruptions.
Whoa.
So I think the plan of the double summon is precisely for situations like this. Honestly, I think the Marauding Captain has fallen out of popularity a little bit because of the fact that it can be negated by infinite impermanence. So if it was a card like, for example, Super Quantum Red Layer, you just special summon the Red Layer, and then they can't, and then do the normal summon. So the impermanence doesn't stop you getting 2 monsters on the field. In this situation, he does have double summon anyway.
Right.
So he's not passing yet. Christos assumed the set indicated that he was going to pass.
Nice try.
But in fact, no, it's a Phantom Knights of Shade.
It's also a pro player move. Just like, oh, it's my turn, okay. If the opponent doesn't immediately say, nope, it's not. You just got a free draw.
So Christos has gone so far as to... oh no, he sided in the Naturia Beast and sided out 1 copy of Isolde, possibly expecting the Isolde to be hit by cherries. There's no point wasting the second slot if you think the ultimate fate is just cherries. So it'll be interesting to see what he can put together.
I mean,
without the use of Isolde.
We did point out that Christos has a great hand to counter everything that Kevin Cutter is throwing at it, but give it up for Kevin Cutter, who is like throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the wall here. Going down to 1 card in hand, and it's not going to stay there for very much longer if he keeps this up.
I don't see a way for him to use the headbutt this time.
The headbutt not yet, but
you never know. You might
still 4 cards in hand, immediately getting rid of all of those.
Yeah, so he has now got the Malicious, so he's got 1 Malicious, and then he's going to be able to summon another from his deck. So he's going to have 5 Link materials, and then he's going to have to decide what his favourite board to end on is with 5 Link materials. But Isolde does bridge a lot of the combos, so I'm not sure this is an ideal situation for Kevin, because it's quite hard to start combos without Isolde in the Goki deck.
Yeah.
But he's going to now make use of the Nightmare Corruptor, well, Nightmare Mermaid, in order to summon a Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is a card which is mostly there for its effect to be just because it's something that you can summon off the Mermaid and have 1 extra body on the field to link summon with.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it has this other effect where it summons it to your opponent's side of the field and stops them special summoning except for link summoning, which is irritating in itself, but it's also just a monster in the main monster zone for Sky Striker, so they have to be able to do something to get rid of it, such as crash it into one of your monsters or have a copy of multi-roll or the field spell, which Christos happens to have both of.
Of course.
In his hand.
It's like infinite abundance.
So many ways to get rid of the Ibli, and he may even have a Nightmare Corruptor, a Nightmare Mermaid in his extra deck, but he doesn't. So some people will run Nightmare Mermaid in their extra deck.
It almost
anyway.
looks like the best thing that Kevin Carter could have done was just passing, because all of the cards in Christos' hand, or almost all of the cards, are like interaction when your opponent is doing something.
Yeah, so that is one of the funnier things that can happen when you have... so a lot of players chose to side cards like Evenly Match and the Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere mode against Goki, so you let them set up their board.
Right.
And then one of the funniest games I heard about was when someone drew 3 copies of Sphere mode, but the Goki player didn't have anything to go off with on their turn. So the Goki player passed, the other player couldn't do anything, and then the Goki player drew the card they needed to combo and proceeded to OTK them.
So this is how it's done.
So this is what you do.
But this is not what we're seeing here.
This is not what we're seeing here. So this is a bit of a soft lock. So it's now he's got 3 co-link monsters which can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and he's going to hope this sees him through.
And Kevin Cutter's face just told the entire story of that first turn.
I don't think he's going to be happy about it, especially that Christos has the multi-roll. So he's really going to hope. So for Christos, what he really wants now is for Area 0 to succeed. Yeah. And it's not. So the fact that if Area 0 had succeeded, that would have got rid of the Ibli, and then multi-roll could be used on the field spell to summon a Ray from the deck.
Right.
But that's not happened, which is quite bad.
I think that's the first time that Kevin Cutter... I mean, okay, I don't want to say the first time that he got lucky a little bit, because
I think he's drawing a Soul Charge off the top in a situation.
Yes, I don't want to discard the Soul Charge. No, let's not forget about that.
But no, that was exactly... If that had happened, then...
But this is one of the greatest games to actually focus on the faces of the players rather than the field.
For all the swings,
Kevin Cutter, there's a lot of expression there. There's a lot going on. and he's not happy the whole time.
That's well, it's a bad draw for Christos and an excellent draw for Cevin. The artifact side is really not something he wants to draw, but he's actually gone ahead and tribute summoned it. That's quite funny.
That's what he do with
I'm
it.
not sure you see that very often.
No, you don't. I'm not sure it's not the correct way to talk about this. I'm sure this is not what you see very often. Full stop.
Yeah, so the side is in there with the Sanctum. So as we were talking about Dimensional Barrier a long time ago, and Sanctum basically does the same thing as Dimensional Barrier because it summons a scythe which prevents you from summoning from the extra deck. But the tribute summon was just to get the Ibli off the field, so then the multi-roll could be used on the field spell and then summon a Ray, which is what Christos wanted. And in particular, Ray is going to let him link summon a Hayati, which will do some damage, which is important when you're getting close to time to be ahead on life points. And it will put an engage in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be able to attack for 200 over the Mermaid, because Mermaid is reducing the attack of non-co-linked monsters by 1,000.
Yep.
But it won't be destroyed because of the Nightmare Phoenix. And then Hayate attacks directly for 500 damage, and it will let him send an engage, presumably, from his deck to the grave, which can then be picked up by Kagarium in phase 2.
Right.
And search for any card that Christos thinks is the most useful.
What would be the card that is the most useful?
My guess would be Widow Anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Or Eagle Booster. One of those two.
And
I would search for Widow Anchor, but he might choose to search for Eagle Booster.
who knows?
He could get both of them. So there is this nice play you can do if you use Shizuku and multi-roll. In the end phase of a turn, you can trigger Shizuku first, search a Widow Anchor or an Eagle Booster, and then activate that. And then it's in the graveyard, and then you can use the multi-roll to bring it back.
No.
Along with all the other cards that you were going to bring back. So that's quite a common play to get that one extra interruption for your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
But it looks like he's not... he has to link away the artifact scythe first, in fact, before he can use the engage. So he's not going to end on a Shizuku, most likely. So he's probably not going to do that play. He's just going to have to pick his choice of Eagle Booster or Widow Anchor, I think.
But Christos Mourikis...
he's counting again to see if he's got 3 spells in his grave. I don't think he does.
Very calm and composed the entire time. I mean, Kevin Cutter, we mentioned it, he's very nimble, moving around quite a bit on that table. Whereas Christos Mourikis, he's not burning a lot of calories. He's just really...
He does look very chilled out, yeah.
He's like saving his energy.
I'm not sure what he's thinking about with that afterburner, because the afterburner is not... going to do very much for him. I'm not sure what he's doing with the token. And what link 3 do you think he wants?
We're going to see.
We're going to see. Is it just Nightmare Unicorn, or is there something cooler? Just the Nightmare Unicorn. Fair enough. He's going to have to discard his Ghost Ogre, which was a potential piece of interruption for the Nightmare Unicorn. Nightmare Unicorn is quite fun that it actually... So for its second effect that lets you draw more cards in your draw phase, it does count your opponent's cards. So if your opponent happens to have a load of co-linked Nightmare monsters, then you will get to draw some cards off Nightmare Unicorn. It's pretty bold of Christos to end his turn with 0 interruptions.
Yeah, but maybe he felt like he has to risk it here, because that interaction, even though it's a strong one, wasn't strong enough with Kevin Cutter's field, and what else there is gonna...
Kevin's already got the 1 Goki monster in his graveyard, so now he can summon and link away. He'll be able to... He's got 2 Goki monsters in his graveyard, and 2 is a very good number for Goki Rematch, because it brings back 2. But he does need to be very aware that he's only got 2 minutes and 40 seconds before he will have to... Well, the duel will end. So he does have to be on more live points than his opponent after 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
That's a bit of a thriller here. He needs to...
It is a thriller. I don't think that should be too difficult. I think there's a fairly simple line here if he wants to, which is just to make Firewall Dragon and attack with it.
Yeah.
Make Firewall Dragon so he can attack with Firewall Dragon, and he can then attack with Nightmare Phoenix. Now, Christos does have a face-down Hornet Drones to give him 1 monster to block with, and then you could use the Firewall Dragon to simply...
Bounce that?
Bounce that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very simple thing to do, but you do need to be aware, it might not be the best thing to do by a long shot.
Yeah.
But you just need to come up with a plan to do the damage. But in fact, you want a plan that takes slightly longer.
And any plan is a good plan at this point in time.
Any plan is a good plan, because this is... I mean, again, this isn't. There is a time where you want to come up with the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when you've only got a minute and a half, you do need to make sure that it takes less than a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a very long play, it might be. Well, you do need to just be careful.
It's not working in your favor right now.
Yeah.
Especially when you're behind on life points, which is also
I mean,
important.
he might not be aware of the time, which might be a bit awkward.
He seems to be keenly aware of the time, to be honest.
Oh, is he? Okay. Well, in that case, he's probably going to take this game so long as he makes sure he enters the battle phase. Because at this point now, he's... I don't know why. Honestly, I would have just targeted the... what's the unicorn on the field?
Yeah.
Just to make sure you're going to be able to attack for enough damage to win the game.
So 1 minute remaining, according to our clock. Kevin Cutter still behind in terms of life points. Christos Mourikis won that first duel that took forever.
So now he is going to go for the firewall and probably do the original plan that I suggested.
Stick to the plan.
Stick to the plan. But now he's going to be able to start to conduct some firewall sort of shenanigans in the old school way. Finally achieved, even though he was sort of shut down on the first
40 more seconds for Kevin Cutter. I mean,
it might be the plan of Kevin just to make sure that he plays for enough time so that Christos doesn't get a chance to come back.
He really doesn't look like it. He really seems to be like, I'm just trying to do this as fast as I can, and this at the moment is the fastest. He did advance to the battle phase.
So now at this point, he's done more than 700 damage. I can't really see Christos being able to
If you're
come
rooting
back.
for Kevin Cutter, it's time to sit back and relax, at least for a little moment.
That was making me very tense as to whether he knew how much time he had left.
Wow, 7,982 life for Christos Mourikis.
That's an interesting
I doubt
number of
that.
life points. Now I think it's sort of academics. There's only a second left, so that's time on the round.
So
So under the new time rules, the game will end at the end of this phase. And so unless Christos has got some very interesting tech face down, he's probably not going to be doing...
Well, we got perfect information.
3,000 damage to Kevin during his battle phase.
That would be a really good card.
There's one card which does 3,000 damage to your opponent. There's a trap called Blasting the Ruins, but you need 30 cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet.
I think Christos is still doing stuff.
No, Kevin is still doing stuff.
Kevin is still doing stuff, which might mean that the time... I don't know why the time's not...
Well, sometimes they get extra time and we are not aware of it. 5 minutes left is what Thomas told us at 3:22, which is 4 minutes ago. That means they might have had some extra time. So
if that's 4 minutes ago, then there's only a minute left now.
That is exactly what I'm presuming here. And
I would...
If that is the case, then quite honestly, that was very fair. But
there it is.
Okay, there's the time. So now it is time. Christos is in his main phase.
So he's not... I don't see how he does any damage to his opponent.
He's not going to attack here, but he needs to burn.
We could have a look and see, but I just don't think there's any burn options in Christos.
He's just going to check his graveyard.
His deck at all.
Yeah, he cannot burn for enough damage. He might be able to burn for some damage.
I don't think there's any burn damage, actually.
We're going to get a bit of an encore with a third duel between Christos Mourikis and Kevin Cutter. And chances are, because the main event has been starting a little bit earlier than all the other matches might have already finished. I think there's one more match in the top 64 area, maybe two more matches, something like that.
The top 32?
In the top 32, thank you very much. And everybody else is now having their eyes on this particular match. That is now going to the very last few turns.
I believe under the new rules, they're not allowed to side deck. And the player who goes first is determined by a roll of the dice. I might have just made that up. But I think that's what goes on when time is called. Neither of them have side decked, so I assume they probably would have side decked if they had been allowed to. So I was right so much. And I think the start player is determined randomly. And then I think they get 4 turns. However, I'm hoping the judges know that better than me.
They will. Yeah, so basically they're keeping the deck the same way it was in Game 2. So that's one important thing. That means they can straight go to shuffling.
And I think they get a full 4 turns, and then whoever's ahead on life points after the 4 turn.
No, the winner of the dice roll.
So it's not determined randomly, but there is a dice roll to determine. I mean, I think in this situation, when Christos has made his deck to go second, and Kevin is side deck to go first, then it might be that either of them choose for... I'm guessing that Christos would choose to go first, actually, given he's got the Sanctum in his deck. And now we're having dice roll discussions.
What are you doing? You don't need a judge to roll a dice.
I don't know. Maybe he said that you should re-roll both of the dice? That's a 10. That's pretty good.
That's 10 10 out of 12 possible is
10
good.
out of 12. Oh, I don't. What is that?
That's a 1.
Is that a 1?
It is a 1.
Sure that's not 5?
Oh yeah, that was confusing part about these dice. That sometimes the symbol was for a 5.
Well, we'll see. This is exciting.
Yeah, let's have a dice reroll.
I don't know. Is that a 5 or a 1? The judge is checking.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
We don't actually know.
Putting it on the time thing. I think I got one of these dice actually in my backpack.
I
my
assume
backpack
that's
is
just
not
to
here.
indicate the number of turns. So this is turn 1. So on that dice, that's
Okay.
a 1, but that's a different symbol to what was on the other dice. So we're going to have to wait and see who's going to start. It is Christos.
It is Christos. Okay, so that has
Christos
been
does
resolved.
have the Sanctums in his deck. So you do get the 1 less battle phase, but I think he's not bothered.
Why he wants to go first because he can assemble
He wants
his
to go
field
first to be able to have more interruptions for his opponent.
Let's see.
In particular, the Artifact Sanctum to summon Artifact Scythe and prevent Kevin from summoning anything from the extra deck.
Yeah, so Kevin doesn't have any way to stop his opponent here.
I mean, you don't really need anything to stop the Sky Striker deck. I think the plan against the Sky Striker deck is to let them do what they want and then have enough to push through what they set up. Whereas you can't really do that with the Goki deck, because if you let them do what they want, then they will win the game.
So Christos Mourikis must be feeling quite okay that he gets to definitely, in theory, gets to definitely see another turn, unless Goki goes like really, really crazy here.
Really crazy. I'm pretty sure it's 4 turns.
Yeah. Yeah, counting up to 4, and then if life points are still equal, they just continue.
And then I think it goes on a turn-by-turn basis at that point, rather than a phase-by-phase
I
basis.
remember that, yes.
So the rules do change a little bit.
It's all right. We definitely get to see...
Christos here has actually got a very strong hand. He's got 2 copies of Engage, which he's going to be able to trigger both of for a draw, as well as he's going to be able to Kagari one of them back. So he's going to get 3 Engage draws as well as 3 Engage searches. So I'm not feeling happy for Kevin right now if you're supporting Kevin. And the multi-roll on the field already. So he's going to have a lot of ways to interrupt Kevin's turn.
Yeah, it's quite a good opening. No way to stop that opening for Kevin Cutter. He does have a Monster Reborn, Marauding Captain, a few things that he can do here.
I think he's going to be quite upset to see the second Engage. The first Engage is kind of bad enough, and then when the second one comes down, you're feeling very sad. And then one of those Engages can get picked up again.
Yeah.
I think 3 cards which search and then draw is pretty powerful.
And just after that last duel where Kevin like rushed, makes it to the battle phase, does enough damage to move ahead or pull ahead in life points, and Christos doesn't have a way to come back. It didn't look like he was able to turn this game around, even if he had more time.
That's tricky to say, but I think so. I think Kevin had enough options at that point that he probably would have been able to seal the game.
Yeah. And now Kevin Cutter, of course, he's feeling it. He's feeling like he's got some wind in the back, basically. Easy going from here, but no. Apparently, Christos Mourikis has a really, really good start in that final duel between those two, where we're going to decide who's going to be advancing to the top 16.
So yeah, not only is Christos going to have a lot of cards, but they're all going to be good cards as well. So you can search multiple copies of Widow Anchor and an Eagle Booster. So he's going to have a monster that's going to have like 2,000 or something attack points that cannot be cleared off the board in any way. Well, it's not going to be 2,000. It's going to be even better than that. It's going to be reducing his opponent's monster's attack. So in a situation where all you want to do is a little bit of damage, all of your monsters having their attack reduced is actually one of the more annoying things that can happen.
This looks like one of the best starts I've seen for the Sky Striker.
This is one of the best starts I've seen for Sky Striker.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
And Kevin is like, what? Still not done?
Especially considering just how important the start is against Goki, because Goki has the power to do so much on its first turn. So you need a strong start against Goki, and that's definitely what Christos has got. So, I mean, Kevin does have a Monster Reborn. His hand is reasonably strong. I mean, normally you don't want to draw the Ibli. In this situation, if you get far enough that you would be summoning Ibli, I think you're probably in a good spot anyway. So the Ibli is just essentially just a dead card in his hand, as opposed to anything worse. But Oh, he's got Twin Twisters now, and that is quite a big pickup because he knows the location of one of the Widow Anchors.
There's 3 waiting for him.
Yeah, so he knows one of the Widow Anchors, and it might take out a second. So that would leave him with only 1 Widow Anchor and 1 Eagle Booster to deal with.
Super crazy still.
Super crazy.
You get rid of 2 of them, which sounds like a really good thing, and then there's still 1 more waiting for you, and yet another card that can stop you from doing something.
So, and I think Christos has still got hand traps.
He's got 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit.
Absurd number of cards going on.
Yeah.
So the Widow Anchor, of course, and the second Widow Anchor. So I think that's the ideal situation, because if you hit the Eagle Booster would have just been chained and done what it's supposed to do anyway.
Yeah, so that is definitely good news for Cevin. Still has to find a way to fight through that field. I mean, he's got 2 more turns in theory if he gets to see his second turn.
I mean, Sky Strike is not a deck that's notorious for ending the game.
Right.
But essentially, if you can't get through them 1 turn, they're going to basically just set up what they had the turn before. So if you couldn't get through them 1 turn, you're probably not going to be able to get through the next turn.
Yeah. And that's a bit depressing. Like, you know exactly what your opponent is going to do to stop you from attacking. So you see everything that's going to be thrown in your way again. So, you know, I need to push now or never.
So he has got a nice option here, which is to use Monster Reborn preemptively on his Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. And the Ibli would then... He could then link summon with the Ibli and then give his opponent the Ibli, which would prevent Christos from being able to use any of his interrupts, because he would have a monster in his main monster zone. But in this case, he's chosen to summon the Marauding Captain, and the Marauding Captain is going to be stolen with the Widow Anchor, which is, I don't think, it's going to leave Cevin with nothing to work with, really. He's got Monster Reborn on Ray, actually, because Ray is a warrior. I had forgotten that. So he can Monster Reborn the Ray. I was looking at his graveyard and thinking there's no warrior.
And also, it's like he was immediately like, here we go, this is what I'm going to do next.
But Monster Reborn on Ray is a way to continue his plays. But I think perhaps Christos has been able to put enough interruption in his path, and now the Ogres come down, and I think that might be...
Again, you can look at the face of Kevin Cutter. He's
nail in the coffin there.
Not happy about this.
He's adding the Octastretch, which does have an ability to halve the battle damage he takes from a particular battle, but I'm not sure it's going to be quite enough.
And it's not the only Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. If we bring up Christos' hand again, he's got a second copy. He's got the Hornet Drones. He's also got the Ray that you mentioned.
Now, the Ray came from the graveyard.
Oh, yeah. The card that we mentioned, just generally speaking.
But yeah, the Ghost Ogre, you can only use 1 Ghost Ogre a turn, so I'm not sure Kevin is...
Yeah, but I mean, if it goes to a second turn, Kevin is like, okay, now I got this.
So that is what Sky Striker is kind of known for, is that if you can't get through their defenses on 1 turn, then on the turn after they're going to have the same defenses or even more defenses.
Yeah. So what a fortunate position for Christos Mourikis. He really put himself in the driver's seat here. Kevin Cutter is left with just a Marauding Captain and a little way to stop some battle damage with that Octastretch, and that's pretty much it for him.
Yeah, I don't think... I mean, Christos probably could assemble 8,000 damage here. And I suppose he might as well try and assemble 8,000 damage.
You might as well try to win the game if you can.
But I mean, in this point, as far as I'm concerned, it's basically academic, assembling 8,000 damage. I mean, there comes a point with the Sky Striker deck where, as I said, you don't get through them on the first turn. There's just no way you're getting through them on the second turn.
Yeah.
But, so, you mean... I mean, obviously, it's the correct thing to do, is end the game a turn earlier, just in case your opponent draws something ridiculous. But even in this case, a Soul Charge would not do the trick.
Yeah.
Because,
especially if you don't have a battle phase.
Because you don't have a battle phase to do any battle damage.
Yeah.
So, there's not even a miracle Soul Charge coming off the top at this point for...
Kevin.
Kevin, yeah. So I think we will probably see... So we can see the Shark Cannon now. And it's much easier for the Sky Striker deck to assemble a lot of damage when their opponent has decent monsters for you to steal with either the Shark Cannon or the Widow Anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And Boral Sword is the new favourite toy for dealing a lot of damage in one go.
Well, I think Christos is not going to complain if his opponent is not going to throw a lot of monsters at him at this point in time.
Oh no, he's got the Isolde in the graveyard.
He now has the Ash Blossom as well to stop even more things.
Yeah, so I think we might see something like a big chain involving Hornet Drones. I mean, maybe just activate Hornet Drones and then Kagari, add back the Hornet Drones, activate Hornet Drones, chain Shark Cannon, and then he's going to have 4 link materials, I think you'd have to do some extra link summoning in order to make it fully into a Boral Sword, because you cannot use the token to make a Boral Sword, because Boral Sword does require effect monsters, so you might have to go via a Hayate, etc., etc. But I think the Boral Sword is going to come down for 8,000. I mean, to threaten 8,000 damage.
Yep.
The 8,000 damage won't go through, but it will force the Octastretch out of Kevin's hand, which will leave him with even less resources for next turn.
Yeah. I would be super surprised if Cevin Cutter somehow manages to turn this around. But stranger things have happened. We've had a match that seemed like it was all but decided, and then suddenly Battle Fader dropped, and that put a halt to the offensive attempts of one of the players.
Kevin's not got Battle Fader.
Yeah, he doesn't have them. You don't have to give everything away here.
He's got a mini Battle Fader.
It's called suspension, my friend.
They can see, everyone watching can see that he's gone Octastretch.
But they might not be paying attention enough, so they're only listening to the audio. This could be a podcast.
They're here
for all I care.
For education as well as entertainment.
No.
No?
It's just entertainment. All right, so here is the attack.
So the first Boral Sword swing hits for 3,000.
Yeah. Seems
then
fair.
Ray hits for 1,500, and then the second Boral Sword swing hits for 3,600. So I don't actually think that's 8,000 damage.
Yeah, Kevin seems almost relaxed here.
Oh, no, it is 8,000 damage. Yeah, it's 8,100. So Kevin is going to have to use the Octastretch in order to not run out of life points.
Yeah.
So that's probably his best shot at the moment.
You don't say.
In fact, hang on. No. It's only 3,600.
So he's good.
So he'd be on 900. So
Yeah.
I guess you keep the Octastretch just in case.
Well, he's thinking about it, checking the life point. No, he does discard
He
it.
disagrees with me. Maybe he's disagreeing with me on the arithmetic, but I don't know why you wouldn't keep the Octastretch if you weren't going to die.
So Christos is just double checking the Octastretch again for a very quick moment at least. This is his last turn, so once he passes, he needs to make sure that Kevin cannot do any more damage than what he just did, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, it is quite a lot. I think Kevin will achieve precisely 0 damage.
And also, I would be super surprised if Christos didn't know all of these things by heart, basically. Kevin's life points are going up and down here a little bit. Now they are at the correct number, which is 1,000.
He should have taken 1,800. Unless I'm mistaken. I think the Boral Sword should have been 3,600, and half of that is 1,800. But I might have done some arithmetic wrong somewhere. But I think he took way more damage than he should have taken.
Yeah.
But as I said, I don't think he's going to do any damage next turn, so...
So is the Octastretch? No, it's just
the
not
Octastretch is in the graveyard.
Yeah, I'm just double checking because the app says something different, but the app says a lot of things here. Marauding Captain is still on the feed, for example.
He has drawn the Soul Charge yet again.
But
he's going to do the classic Soul Charge and burn yourself to death.
Yeah, okay, that's a way to do this. And then he shakes the hand. He's going down, but he's going down with style. Yeah.
Do you remember the scene in one of the Yu-Gi-Oh series where one of the characters played Soul Charge? He'd turned dark and he'd been using his monsters maliciously and sending them all to the graveyard, and he freed them all from the graveyard with the Soul Charge at the expense of his own life points.
I don't remember that, but I'm going to think about it in our post-match analysis. We just saw one of the best matches of the entire weekend between Christos Mourikis and Cevin Cutter. It was a back and forth, a roller coaster ride, not just of emotions, but also of monsters that hit the field, left the field, hit the field, left the field, going back and forth so much. I'm quite exhausted, to be honest.
We really saw the insane comeback power of Sky Striker resolving multiple engages in the one turn. I think the first game was perhaps the one where it was very back and forth. So the second game was quite close as well.
The first game was where at one point we said, okay, if I was Christos, I would just shuffle up.
I would have shuffled up if I was Christos,
and he
but
just
it paid off for just waiting and seeing. Yeah. So maybe shuffling up there would be giving your opponent too much respect.
Too much respect.
I mean, it's
second game was a bit of a different story. There was an opening for Cevin, but the time was running out, and it was a really. We were quite looking at the time the whole time, and he was going to the battle phase, which is like 30 seconds remaining, something like that. But he did make it to the battle phase.
Poke a little bit, and then
poke a little bit. Well, I think like 4,000 life points, something like that.
It's a little bit.
It's a little bit, and then Christos was left with just like 1 or 2 cards, draws for his turn. Gets to the main phase, summons the monster, but then time was called. That means no more action for him in terms of battle phase action. And that meant we would have to play a third duel, and that was also just quite the thriller. Like I said, we need a bit of a break, and that's why we're going to take you guys over to Luke and Matt.
Thank you very much, Ollie and Tom. What a match that is.
Yeah, that was a great one, although I actually think Christos should have won that if he would have made his turn 1 setup in the very first game.
Oh, first game, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not Christos, sorry, Cevin. Yeah, his setup in the first game, as Tom was pointing out, he felt was a bit off with the firewall free bounces.
Yeah.
Maybe if he'd have set up differently, he could have won that game, and then he would have won in time.
Yeah, maybe with a try
on the second game. And it would have never have got to the game 3, which ultimately was no way he was winning that, from the looks of it.
No.
But that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, we were the last table in the tournament, so we're going to have to shoot straight over to the next round, but we shouldn't be gone for long. See you guys soon.